I would now like to introduce today's presenters. Amy Fung is a partner leading Everest Group's sourcing and vendor management practice. In this role, she advises enterprises on maximizing value from strategic provider relationships in global services categories. Banushi Malhotra is a practice director in Everest Group's sourcing and vendor management practice. She advises clients on maximizing value through their supply-based engagements to obtain cost, business, and operational benefits. Akash Tunga is a senior analyst at Everest Group. He works primarily in the sourcing and vendor management practice and the procurement outsourcing space within the business process services practice. He is currently leading the research on supplier relationship management technology. And with that, I would like to turn things over to Amy.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. We're glad you joined us today. And today we're going to talk about supplier relationship technology. We've been focusing on this area of procure tech as a starting point because we understand that a lot of the clients that we work with that are managing very complex strategic outsourced supplier relationships really need technology to up their game, to enable the value. It's difficult to do this on paper and spreadsheets. So we're going to hit on some key discussion points today. We'll talk about technology-aided supplier management, what that looks like from a lifecycle perspective. We'll talk about the state of the market of adoption in terms of supplier management technologies, and then we'll give some tips on choosing the right tool. So I am happy to have my colleagues here today. We're right in the middle of doing some research on this that will be published within the next month or two. So we welcome conversations on this and questions as we go. We will be getting to the questions at the end. We'll keep an eye on that and try to answer them as we go if possible. So starting out, let's look at the framework of how we have delineated supplier lifecycle management activities. And there's really a series of activities across a lot of different technology solutions. And we'll talk about how the solutions kind of fit across one or many of these activities. But we sat down and there are a lot of models for processes across supplier management. And we tried to break down the risk piece, the relationship piece, and the data piece, as all of these are really critical from the point of onboarding to the point of offboarding. And there's several different types of tools that fit into this, but in terms of grouping the value and the activities that you're trying to manage here, it's really around supplier risk management, supplier relationship management, supplier data management, and the information that goes into it. So there's quite a long list of information here, but I think this can be a handy reference slide to understand what is in scope for supplier management. And so we've seen organizations trying to transform the way that they manage supplier relationships and the way that they manage data while improving collaboration and while they adopt digital solutions. So going from traditional operations to a transformed state where you move to visualization, better dashboards, better reporting, a unified view of supplier data versus multiple different versions that may be in legacy ERPs or other systems, focusing on your strategic roles and activities and work time focused on strategic activities, more collaborative processing and environment and end-to-end workflows, and then finally standardizing and automating your processes. And often streamlined cloud-based remote working, as that is really the leading edge way to work these days. And for those who weren't ready for that 3 or 4 years ago, they were kind of pushed into that over the last few years, and systems really enable that level of remote work. So let's jump into a poll right now. It's always interesting to see who we have on the line. And this is a select all. What we would like to know is, for your organization, what types of tools and technologies have you adopted? And do you have tools for technology for any of these activities or all of these activities? go ahead and select as many as apply: demand management, surveys on the relationships and benchmarking, risk monitoring, SLA tracking, stakeholder management, internal stakeholders typically, sometimes external stakeholders, depending on the spend category, and then supplier information management and data enrichment. So and sorry, a couple more there: supplier performance measurement and tracking, and supplier performance reporting. So make sure you scroll down to catch all of those. And we will give this just a few seconds for people to respond. And then I'm going to turn it over to Akash as we'll talk through the next section on technology adoption.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, Akash. So what do you typically see as the most common here?
So I was expecting supplier information management to be most common, followed by risk monitoring probably. But yeah, the results are interesting to see.
Yeah, a little bit off. I would say they're all, this is an imperfect sample, right? But looking across the board, we're about close to 50% for many of these, not most, but supplier performance management is the higher one. I think that makes sense. Scorecarding, tracking performance. Although interesting that stakeholder management and relationship surveys are, a little bit lower than that. So, some kind of bumpy data here, kind of interesting. I think we can look at this though and say that no one is, there's nothing across the board that everyone is doing well, or everyone has adopted tools for. I'm making the assumption that if they haven't adopted tools, they may not be doing it well, but maybe that's, some people do things really well on paper or in spreadsheets. So Akash, why don't we turn it over to you and tell us a little bit about what you've seen in terms of adoption of technology?
Definitely, Amy. Thank you. So what we saw in the poll here is a bit different from what we have in the survey here that we did. And well, what we saw in our earlier survey is that supplier information management and data enrichment is an area that has seen high adoption of digital tools. And we know, right, that this is definitely an area of priority to every organization. However, one other reason for high adoption in this information management area is a result of availability of various solutions in this space. So that could also be a reason in having a different output from the poll. That is, within the segment, within the information management segment, there are a lot of solutions that come into account, right? From data management capabilities of ERP platforms to specialized supplier information management solutions. And most organizations with an ERP platform tend to use it for managing supplier data as well. Also, on the other hand, this particular information management segment includes data enrichment solutions or ratings providers, as per our understanding, which provide supplier information from external sources. And when I say supplier information here, it could be concerned with financial information, reputational information, risk information, etc. And since many organizations typically rely on these ratings providers, the adoption is automatically high, right? And so it's also on how people perceive these questions on what is supplier information management that could lead to some skew way. And then we have demand management from our survey with high adoption. Since demand forecasting and management is a key priority for procurement and vendor management organizations, it has always been an essential capability of the source to pay suites. In this space particularly, we have rarely observed any standalone solutions. And the standalone solutions that solely offer demand management. This is usually offered as an add-on module as part of the larger suite of best-of-breed solutions in a way. And then we see organizations that have adopted tools in the likes of Power BI and Tableau that serve dashboarding and visualization, which is not exactly a supplier management tool, but it is used for purposes across the organization, irrespective of functions. Since not all tools have good enough dashboarding capabilities that especially cater to various stakeholders. And on the lower adoption end from our survey, we have the more transaction intensive and highly decentralized activities. And that is where the poll stands out, right? The poll sort of showed the opposite of this, but in a way it is also true because the activities like SLA tracking, other performance management activities and relationship surveys, From our survey, we got to know that these activities are primarily carried out relying on spreadsheets. But however, the performance tracking activity especially has seen gradual growth in adoption in the past couple of years. If we see the growing adoption, then it has been on the forefront, I would say. And that is also something that we'll see having further higher adoption going forward. Because we have also been hearing from a lot of our members that they have plans to implement performance management tools in their pipeline. And now by double clicking on these areas and getting to a sub activity level, we will try to understand which of these activities have high adoption of third-party tools compared to homegrown tools or solutions. And not surprisingly, it's across supplier onboarding, information management, policy and compliance management, and demand management that we see high adoption of third-party tools. And here is how you can read these charts, right? It's 89% of those who use a tool for supplier onboarding have adopted a third-party tool, while the rest 11% use a homegrown tool. So in general, the prevalence of homegrown tools is quite low across supplier management activities. And now we have already discussed the high adoption of tools for information management and demand management. When coming to onboarding, the high adoption is a result of the complexity of the onboarding process, especially in the given macroeconomic scenario. Organizations are moving towards a more robust process to ensure lower supplier risk or location risk. This led to the higher adoption of tools that help streamline or standardize the onboarding process across the global operations of organizations. These tools also ensure customizability. For example, they allow the organizations to check compliance required at a specific location where the supplier is based out of, or even the location where service delivery is needed. And we also have some of these providers mentioned here who offer digital solutions for onboarding and information management. And I guess some of them are part of the audience as well right now. And yeah, a similar reason has driven the high adoption of third-party digital tools for policy and compliance management as well. If you see the regulations that organizations have to adhere to, it is quite complicated, and especially the global organizations with service delivery involving locations across the globe, they find it very difficult to navigate the various regulations across regions, which has driven the growth of adoption of third-party tools in this space, which simplify and automate most of the processes. Now, on the contrary, let us see what are some of the activities that saw the lowest adoption of tools, be it homegrown or third-party.
Yeah, Akash, I think before you go ahead, there was a question which we wanted to address, right? So somebody is asking about demand management and how we define it. So great question. And I just wanted to, take a stab at addressing it. So demand management is the process wherein you, as a supplier management professional, are coordinating with the business professional before sourcing is initiated and trying to understand what sourcing projects will be coming up, what are their needs for the future, what is their demand, right, when it comes to sourcing. And according to the demand, you try to understand which suppliers that you already have as incumbents will be best fit for that. So from your end, you act as the supplier, market information SME or the incumbent supplier performance SME, and you try to map the best suppliers from an incumbent perspective to the upcoming demand that business may have. So this is like right before even, sourcing gets into the picture of starting their projects. It sort of helps you gain that sort of, cadence with business as well, and sort of relay the incumbent supplier performance expertise in that case.
Yeah, thank you, Anshi. Yeah. Thank you for taking that question. So getting back to this, when we say that there is low digital adoption, we are counting those relying on spreadsheets equivalent to not having a tool in place. Since despite using spreadsheets, the processes are still highly manual intensive. So what we observed is supplier conflict management is an area that saw no adoption of tools. And this is also reflected on the provider side of the market, right? Where there are very few options of providers that with dedicated conflict management solutions. However, most tools also allow suppliers to flag issues they have with the buyers and vice versa, which kind of solves the conflict management solution. but it's not a dedicated module offering in most cases. And coming to relationship surveys and performance reporting, most organizations do not use any tool. These are also some of the decentralized activities conducted at supplier level and often carried out by dedicated supplier managers. But again, we're observing more and more organizations showing willingness to adopt digital tools with an objective to standardize most of these decentralized activities. And one key feature that we are seeing regarding the relationship surveys or performance-related surveys is the multi-language support. Now, most of the global organizations have suppliers from across regions and stakeholders who are not very comfortable with English. This required the organizations to conduct these surveys in regional languages, and most tools have catered to this demand from organizations. They allow multiple languages to be used as text in these surveys. And now coming back to activities witnessing high adoption of tools, let's double click on the supplier information management tools. While we discuss that this segment includes third-party partners that provide external supplier data pulled from various sources, here we have data showing which type of information providers are organizations partnering with most. 69% of organizations have partnered with third-party providers for financial and reputational ratings of suppliers. As we discussed before, given the macroeconomic scenario, organizations have prioritized risk management, and keeping track of financial and reputational information of these suppliers is key to managing risk. The data from these ratings providers feeds into the supplier master data during the onboarding. But most organizations have also periodic assessments to reevaluate financial information of these suppliers. And this is where the tools come in play. With the use of tools, it is now also possible to get real-time alerts and not wait till the next periodic assessment. And it's also possible to get real-time notifications concerning this supplier information. While previously the traditional way was to rely on manual processes and spreadsheets, and every now and then undergo the process of updating this information by sending out surveys to suppliers, requesting for relevant data, and then analyzing it. This can now be changed with the adoption of tools and automating to a large extent. On the other hand, though relatively it's lower adoption, we have seen increasing adoption of third-party ratings partners who provide sustainability and diversity-related information. This has particularly grown in the last couple of years, with ESG now becoming a top priority, especially focused to third-party carbon emissions. Organizations are now showing interest in tracking sustainability information of suppliers, and it is also sort of driven by regional regulations, right? Primarily in the US and Europe regions, they have been the front runners in establishing ESG regulations. For example, US especially has strong diversity regulations, which build demand for the need to track diversity-related information of these suppliers. Now, while we have been discussing the drivers behind adoption of various tools or why should one go for these tools, but we also understand that there are a lot of challenges that organizations face in adopting these tools or even undertaking digital transformation, and especially for their supplier management activities, right? And yeah, so coming to challenges, one key challenge that we repeatedly hear from organizations is not being able to get approvals or the budget necessary for this digital transformation. And this is a result of lack of understanding of the business impact within the organizations and the business impact of these activities and how technology can help enhance the outcomes that they are prioritizing. We have seen organizations that build a case of expected business. Sorry. We have seen organizations that build a case of the expected business impact and outcomes from digital transformation that they expect, and they have been able to receive more support and positive response internally in that case, where they were able to connect the investments that they make in these solutions to the outcome of those investments. The difficulty around this is also because of the cost involved in implementing some of these solutions, right? However, with improving flexibility amongst most providers. They have designed modular offerings that help cut some costs and allow organizations to build specific capabilities that they might be interested in. And there are also other product-related challenges, including the challenge in integrating the tools and unifying the supplier data across multiple tools. Because most organizations do not just have one platform or best-of-breed solution. They tend to have multiple solutions, making it difficult to unify data across platforms to provide a single unified view of the supplier. And finally, the complexity of the product market, supplier management technologies, is still a very niche area with different types of providers ranging from S2C suites to niche specialist providers with unclear capabilities. This is also the motivation behind we at Everest Group taking up the research, starting with the supplier relationship management space, like Amy previously mentioned, so that we can fill the gap in understanding what is being offered in the market. Now, to understand more specifically and get your views on what are the challenges that your organization has faced in adopting tools, we have a poll that Manusha will be taking you through.
So this is the poll, right? And we wanted to understand from you all what some of the challenges are that you faced in adopting supplier management tools. So, and we, for everything like we have in this deck, we have done dedicated surveys last year in which we've assessed this particular area, right? So it will be good to see what the responses from this are versus what the responses have been on the data we've collected. So we have inability to build a single unified view, as Akash pointed out. We have inability to roll up information by category, unfriendly user interface, internal budget constraints, lack of automation, integration, and of course, solution costs, and too many solutions in the market. I think we'll give it another minute.
Yeah, I guess the results of these are more in line with the survey we conducted.
That's true. That's true. So we have more than 50% on internal budget constraints, inability to build a single unified view. Right. Interesting. Okay, great. So if we move to the next slide now, you'll see how the results that we saw were actually different or very similar to what the poll results are showing, right? So internal budget constraints are the topmost concern that we saw when we did our research, followed by lack of integration capabilities, solution costs, and so on and so forth, right? So 69% and 46%, large difference between this as well. I think if we, all the enterprises that we had interviewed as well, all the buyers that we had interviewed, the fact that something, within SRM is not able to attain budget was also because of the reason that the solution should come from business itself. So business needs to think about the fact that, they also need this particular solution. And that's when the whole change management and actual budget approvals come into place. And this is when I'm talking about the successful stories when it comes to solving the problem of budget constraints. So that is something that we have also worked with across, multiple supplier management leaders and helping create the case along with business collaboration in this area. But that is one of the major challenges still that many companies face. The second one around lack of integration capabilities. I think one of the reasons this does happen is also because there are so many different sources of data, and it's actually very difficult for an existing best-of-breed solution to come into play, integrate with your ERP, collect that information, and also integrate all the other little tools that we've been using across the board. So integration and lack of interoperability, both of these are huge concerns that we have been seeing as challenges across firms. And of course, the cost challenge always is there. There's also a challenge, especially in center-led or sort of decentralized organizations that we see around inability to roll up information by category or region. And typically the governance structure or the organizational structure that you have really plays a big role when it comes to this challenge, right? Because if you have a lot of a lot of supplier managers in different departments across, say, your EMEA region, APAC region, and you have one unit in, say, North America, and so that whole coordination becomes a huge challenge. So all of these are major concerns that we saw, when it comes to supplier management. If we move to the next couple of slides, right, the next section, I think I'll let Amy give an overview of this particular section and what we want to do here.
All right, thank you. So moving on to the next area around the kind of supplier management solutions that we recommend, the drivers in terms of choosing the right tool, technology that fills the gap, and where to look at suites versus best of breed. Let's start a little bit with some of the key drivers for adoption, and these are really the benefits that we see. And I think it's important to understand these benefits as you look at building a business case and change management and digital adoption in general. I saw a comment in the questions, or question in the questions about just the reluctance to move to technology being one of the biggest challenges. And I think that's pretty common. Change management and just changing people's behaviors can be the hardest part of this, especially when everybody manages their suppliers in their own way, on their own spreadsheet, on their their shared drive. But some of the key drivers that really help with SRM solutions are a unified view of supplier data, and having a view of that data across multiple departments and activities. So in some comments here on supplier segmentation and looking across the business, I think that sourcing and procurement as a function, our value to the business is that we can look across multiple spend categories, multiple business units across an enterprise, and bring together visibility that is not as noticeable to those budget holders that are within a silo. So that data is really important. Also enrichment with external data. Performance tracking, I think we all understand how important it is to track performance with SLAs, and even more complex when we're talking about service delivery, where you don't have necessarily a hard receipt. Matching SLAs with invoices, with actual performance and delivery is really important as well. And that's another segment of all of this. Ongoing risk management, obviously important in this world right now. And then, of course, the standardized governance and effective collaboration. So Banushi, I'm going to turn it back to you now that we're kind of into this overview of the key solutions, and you can talk a bit more about all of the considerations here that we see people making. I know there's quite a few. Yeah,
thanks, Amy. So if we talk about this slide, right, the key drivers for adoption of SRM solutions, one aspect that we really saw SRM solutions help through was a project capability, right? So if you think about all of these factors, performance tracking, ongoing risk management, or governance, or collaboration, innovation, what these tools offer is for you to be able to create different activities, different workflows, and different projects in which all of your stakeholders are coming together in one place and just looking at all the activities happening. Right. So giving you an example of, say, effective collaboration through supplier-driven innovation, there is a provider that
Did we lose Banushi?
Yeah, I can't hear it as well. Must be some network issue.
I think she might have frozen there. All right, we can jump in on here. Just jump to, it looks like she dropped off and might be rejoining. So Akash, do you want to take the first slide here, and then I'll take the next one?
Definitely, sure. So so coming to supplier information management systems, right? Like we discussed before, this is a broad aspect which covers onboarding solutions, ratings providers. I guess Panish is back.
Are you back, Manishi?
Right. Sorry
Okay,
about
great.
that.
Just jump into your slides, so we'll let you take over on this one.
Thanks a lot. So I'll continue with my project related story now again, right? So basically let's take an example of innovation, right? If you imagine that an idea was generated by a supplier, let's say in a supplier summit or so, and you have an execution roadmap for the idea itself. This tool actually lets you track all of these areas from idea generation to all the related parties that will be involved in the execution. They will be able to see what is happening on it. All the data that the supplier needs can be the requests can be raised on the tool, and so on and so forth. Projects can be marked complete as well. So this is the visibility that this tool is bringing to the table, right? And from visibility to performance related information as to whether the supplier is strategic or not, all of these things come into play. And that's the unified view that these tools create. So now what we're going to do is, move into the three sort of broader areas that Amy spoke about in the beginning, information management. And I think Akash, you already gave an overview of this particular slide to some extent. But typically, this is the place where the unified view issue is solved, right? So the difficulty that we've been facing in unifying data from across sources, this is the information management tools typically solve these problems, right? So if it's something related to risk-related parameters, such as financial health related factors, if it's, your organization is interested in diversity, ESG related issues, all of these things come into one master sort of database where all supplier information is put together, right? So from supplier performance to supplier risk to supplier ESG, customer satisfaction scores, all of it is coming together through the help of these information management tools, right? This is one area, right? And I think Akash will also cover some part of, how this is, how many SIM tools are actually partnering with a lot of third-party providers, such as financial risk rating firms, ESG rating firms. And I think somebody has asked a question about a supplier diversity related firm as well, which we'll answer in some time. But this is where all that information comes together. And this is where the partnerships with all these different rating providers also comes into play, right? So now moving to the next slide, if you can move to the next slide, I think I've lost access to that. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So talking about risk management, right? This is the second large area in which you need support, and basically risk management actually goes down into two areas. So it starts with risk measurement, right? So ongoing risk tracking or your trigger-induced efforts that are set into play. Let's say there's a Ukraine-Russia crisis, and you have to think about whether your service delivery has been disrupted and so on and so forth. That's when these type of issues come into play, right? Risk measurement, how often should we track this service delivery risk, and so on and so forth, right? So the second part of risk management is actually talking about risk mitigation. What if a risk arises and you have to think about what to do so post that, right? So that is when the project related aspect that I mentioned in the tool comes into play. So supposing there is a risk that has arise, and all your organization or all the business stakeholders that actually work with the supplier should also ideally know about this risk that is there with the supplier. This is the tool that sort of brings that visibility, because you have, a supplier that is there and you see all the red alerts with respect to risk mitigation. And of course, all the planning that needs to be done when it comes to the risk can be done through the project feature. So when you look at the priorities related to risk management, your contractual clauses, your portfolio risks, location risks, all of these are solved through the supplier management solution, because they're able to provide you that real-time ongoing risk assessment, as well as the initiation of remediation planning processes. Now, the next slide, right, which talks about, now this is sort of an overarching area as well, because it's talking about supplier relationship management, governance, collaboration, all of these larger type of, qualitative aspects. So when we talk about this particular area, a lot of things, especially within, let's say, performance management, are covered through tools, right? So your ongoing scorecard assessments, getting the 360-degree view from your business stakeholders, from your suppliers, and from your supplier relationship management team. This is this SRM tool that sort of integrates all of these inputs and governance, right? So whenever there are any escalations, whenever there are conflicts that arise, these features are actually covered through these particular modules as well. So not only now everyone starts with the SLA tracking, right? But what about the entire balance scorecard? What about all the strategic metrics that you need to see with these suppliers, such as ESG, such as your innovation related aspects? That's where these tool gets them together and gives you that unified view, right? So any sort of, technology or solution that you've been getting, they'll provide basic performance management features, but there are also, simplified versions of performance improvement planning things. There are customizable dashboards. There is a very strong, tool to be able to track all your projects related to performance management or innovation initiatives, and so on and so forth. So all the challenges that you've been facing with respect to your spreadsheets and your inability to drive supplier innovation because some idea was generated in some summit and nobody actually tracked it, or no stakeholders or the important stakeholders were not aware about these particular ideas, that is solved through these particular tools. So with that, I think, I was just going to hand over to Akash. He'll take us through how you should evaluate these particular tools.
Yeah. So we have so far discussed from a process or activity point of view on how does technology help and will the gap or enhance, like how does technology help and fill the gap or enhance the outcome? But now with multiple options in the provider landscape, the question is, how does one evaluate a particular solution? We have discussed most parameters listed here at some level during the previous slides, but these turn out to be the key aspects, like the must-haves for an SRM technology, or supplier lifecycle management technology. Now, the depth and breadth of capabilities that the solutions offer across these parameters is the thing where difference falls in. They might be varying depending on the focus area of the technology provider and the type of tool, whether it's a broad-based suite or a best-of-breed solution. Obviously, domain functionality is a no-brainer. However, the breadth and depth of the functionality may vary widely. While some solutions focus on information management, others focus on relationship management activities or risk management activities. And in the market, we are definitely looking at providers making significant efforts to expand their breadth and depth to offer an end-to-end supplier lifecycle management solution. But to be honest, as of now, there still seems to be some gap in realizing that. And customization and integration capabilities are must-have to any supplier management-focused tool. As we highlighted earlier, supplier management is a highly diverse space spanning across regions and categories, resulting in the need for customization and configuration. On the integration front, especially, these tools will have to work in collaboration with existing enterprise-wide or function-wide platforms. And then we have the analytics capability, which becomes essential when dealing with large amounts of data. Supplier managers or category managers involved in developing portfolio strategies or category strategies are often in need of tools that can analyze the spend and location concentration, exposure to a risk across various factors such as probably business impact or even cyber risk, for example. Finally, like any other tool, the navigability and simplified user journeys ensure user satisfaction. So that is one key thing to look out for in these tools. Now we have it all listed, but I am sure there are multiple solutions out there in the market that offer these capabilities, which is true. But again, the differentiation lies in the fact that breadth and depth of these solutions might differ, especially based on the type of solution. Whether broad-based suites or best-of-breed solutions that are focused on supplier management activities. While best-of-breed solutions have focused capability and are trying to fill the gap through unique features that come in handy, It is also that these best of breed solutions have higher customizability or configurability when it comes to meeting some of the user demands. However, these tools are often have less breadth to cater to various broader features that might be needed across the procurement or vendor management function, which is where broad-based suites are preferred by organizations since they have a broader functionality and cater to a wide range of services. However, on the flip side, often have gaps in the depth of functionality within a particular area. There is no best way to go about this, right? It entirely depends on the priorities or objectives of the organization. We have seen organizations go for best of breed solutions, and we have seen organizations go for best of suite solutions. We have also seen them have a hybrid model and adopt modular solutions across both best of breed and best of suite solutions to meet their internal needs. We'll talk a bit more about the way organizations stack up technologies, but before that, we wanted to talk about specialist providers. Now, within supplier management space, apart from best of breed and best of suite solutions, there are ratings or information providers, like we mentioned before, which fall under the specialist category and focus on data enrichment. Here, we are just focusing on ratings providers, which have primarily influenced the high adoption rate within the supplier information management that we observed in our survey. Now, to meet certain regulations and to ensure risk management, organizations partner with specialists for real-time monitoring. Common choice has been observed to be generic providers covering a comprehensive view of supplier information, as well as financial ratings providers who also usually offer reputational risk ratings and cumulative risk ratings of suppliers across the world. And as mentioned multiple times before, past a couple of years, we have observed some of the sustainability and diversity ratings providers grow significantly owing to the growing regulations, as well as also the organizations themselves prioritizing their ESG goals. Cybersecurity is one other area of specialization within the ratings providers market. And one thing that is notable here is that most of these information providers are concerned with risk and compliance. Apart from these ratings providers, there's another group of firms that provide valuable information regarding suppliers and concerned markets. Those are the industry research providers who provide valuable insights into industry trends. And proudly so, Everest Group is a valuable partner to many organizations in this space. As many of you know, we cover the global services market in breadth and depth. For the audience here as well, we have something we wanted to offer. Amy, would you like to elaborate further?
Yes, thank you. So we'd like to, for those that attend and or listen to the replay of this webinar, offer an opportunity to speak with our analysts. So I mentioned earlier when we started that we are working on research right now, going through a process to bring in tech providers of SRM solutions, really highlighting some of the newer and interesting functionality and features. This won't be a peak where we rank and rate them because they're really, it's a basket of apples and oranges and pears. So that wouldn't make a lot of sense at this stage of the market, but we will have information on adoption trends and the types of providers. And if you're looking for more of a conversation on specific providers around SRM, happy to have a conversation on that. If you are a tech provider that provides these kinds of solutions, we would love to have you participate in that research. There's still a little bit of time left. So click the link. I see that our Zoom host just posted a link in the chat or in the Q&A that you can click and access that, and you'll also probably receive a follow-up after with that link. So please let us know, and we will set up a conversation for more of a one-on-one discussion about what might be relevant to your organization. And with that, I think we're going to jump into one more poll before we wrap up. And the poll here is what types of tools and technology you have adopted. And I'm going to caveat this and say specifically for supplier relationship management, because I'm sure about 95% of you have an ERP system that does a lot of other things. Pick the one that's you're leading. I know that many of you have many of the multiples, so hybrid, stack or combination of ERP suite and best of breed or niche solutions would be the right option there if you have a couple of these doing SRM activities. And it's always interesting to see this. I think those of us who've been in the space for a while have seen this kind of evolve from ERP to suites to a combination of best of breeds and niche solutions, as well as the that kind of hybrid model. Not many people using just their own or just a specific niche or best of breed solution here. It does look like most of you are using some kind of a combination or hybrid, or you're using your ERP solution for this. So that's always interesting to see. Thank you, everyone. And let me just share that. This takes a second. I think we already saw it, right? So we had 30% on ERP and 40% just about on the hybrid model. So let's jump to talk a little bit more quickly about what those all are, right? So this is kind of the groupings that we've traditionally used for different types of systems. And many companies use a broad-based suite, a source-to-contract or a source-to-pay system that covers their sourcing and their supplier management needs. Some still use their ERP, and depending on the ERP that you have, the capabilities that may meet your needs. A lot of companies find that the ERP capabilities they have built in don't necessarily meet their needs for source to pay or for source to contract. So they end up using a suite, and there's quite a few of those available. When we talk about other capabilities like onboarding and risk and services requisitioning or performance reporting, that is often used. Often people are bringing in best of breed solutions, and there's quite a few in the market. I'll show an example in a second. But what we find is that across the source to pay process, across the source to contract and the supplier information, supplier lifecycle management process, a lot of companies have a number of different technologies in here. I think the key thing for me, though, is that all of the data and the data enrichment needs to be from one common thread. So we often refer to that as an intelligent supply data lake or an intelligent data tool. There are a number of third-party tools, and sometimes this is based in the supplier master as well. If it's in a suite, one source of truth that contains all of the information and the data on your suppliers. So supplier data, spend data, contract metadata, forecasts, catalog, and item master. That needs to sync up across all of these systems. And that's often the challenge that people had in the past in bringing these systems together and helping them to kind of work as one streamlined set of tools instead of a bunch of different disparate processes. So really important to think about it that way. And now with artificial intelligence, with machine learning, with RPA, there's much better capabilities in bringing this all together as well. Here's one example of an insurance firm that we worked with that had a hybrid model. So they had their supplier master data in their ERP with really the basic information, not necessarily enriched. They also had at the bottom of the slide an intelligent supply data lake that has a number of different risk ratings sources. So D&B for financial and reputational risk, BitSite for security, Supplier IO for diversity risk. These are pretty common players in the market. And they had specific tools across best of breed. They did run an Ariba suite, SAP Ariba, which is pretty common for source to pay or source to contract. In this case, they used that for source to pay. Brought in best of breed tools for including Syrian Labs for contract management and Archer for risk management, business continuity. One of the challenges, though, that we saw here is that there was a lack of holistic supplier information views. You have an ERP with master data, and then you have different enrichment data coming in from other sources. Sorry, I lost that slide for a second here. Let me just jump back. There we go. And so some gaps there, difficult to kind of seamlessly transfer that supplier information across your different systems. And we also had Sorry, I'm not sure who's hitting the thing, but it's moving quickly. I see a mouse. We also saw, some challenges around their reporting and their dashboarding capabilities. And then finally, performance management goals that they were focused on. They were doing, they did have a single view of supplier performance information, and they had KPI-based performance surveys, which is really helpful. This enables, some of the tools they have here did enable scorecards and performance reporting, but it was done at the category level, and data to multiple stakeholders was shared that way. So I would say this is a pretty typical setup, but it's not necessarily the optimal setup, but very common today, where we see additional information, additional tools used for all of this, what I call it enrichment, risk, diversity, security, et cetera, screenings and data that you need to bring into the ecosystem. So with that, I want to move on to Q&A. Just wanted to share that example to kind of bring to light what we're talking about. Let's just jump to the Q&A now and see if there's a couple. I did see a couple of questions. I see one about customizable dashboard. Can you elaborate more on customizable dashboard? Is that based on user persona, or is it more than that? Banushi, do you want to comment on what we mean by a customizable dashboard? I know you worked with a couple of those.
Yeah, I think definitely it does include user personas, right? But it also includes your particular requirements. Say, for instance, you want to user personas would cover the fact that some stakeholders are able to access some type of data versus not some other type of data. But customizability also includes factors such as what are the various things that you need to track for strategic suppliers versus non-strategic suppliers, right? Setting the boundaries for what do you mean by a strategic supplier and what do you mean by tier 2 or what do you mean by routine. So all of these aspects, we've seen that a lot of tools provide customizability according to your organization's needs, right? And Akash, do you want to elaborate on that? I know you have a broader view.
Yeah. So you have mostly covered all of it, Manushi. So it's on the same lines, right? It's not just about user persona, but user persona also plays a key role in our recent research as well. We have seen providers having these features where you can decide what sort of a chart or how do you want to track a certain metric or a certain parameter. How do you want to visualize and how often do you want to track? How do you want to show it to the various stakeholders that you have within your firm? So customizability across all of these aspects is something we are looking at.
Yeah, definitely.
Another question here about how do we deal with issues around data quality and the overall data culture in organizations looking to implement supplier information management systems? This is a huge question. I'll start and then I'll turn it over to the team, see what they want to say. I would say that some of the newer technologies around machine learning and AI have helped with this, where it used to take a really long time to kind of cleanse the data from the start. We can do that much faster now. Instead of months, it's days or hours in some cases. That also helps with cleansing and categorizing data as it comes in on an ongoing basis. I think data governance is really, really important here in terms of setting up the structure, making sure that the systems are set up so it's easy to put in the data in the right format, easy to capture the right data. If you're asking your requisitioners to categorize and they're always picking animals because that's a sign that your systems aren't really set up for to intuitively know what kind of information they're looking for. Another important point that I've heard made a number of times in the last couple of years is that we need to move beyond trying to get the data perfect. The data set we have in sourcing is never going to be perfect. If we can get to the majority of the data that we collect is coming in accurately enough to make directional decisions, and we're enriching it on an ongoing basis, that is a great place. That shouldn't hold us back from doing all of these other things. And I think philosophically, we want a culture, in your organization, you want a culture of good data governance and a culture of quality. But the culture of perfection and waiting for perfection in data is just unrealistic and not really necessary to do the right job and to get the value. Anyone else want to comment on data issues?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what you said, Amy. Said should not stop from doing the other things, right? So data quality, so achieving data quality should not be a precursor to implementing supplier information management systems. It, I guess, also kind of goes hand in hand. Once you start taking those tools and start putting data through them, then it automatically improves the quality of your overall data and also the data culture in your organization.
Yeah, definitely. I think we are just at the end of our time now. Couple other questions, and we will try to respond to people individually with some of these questions if we can. But I want to make sure we wrap up on time. And once again, there's a link in the chat if you're interested in having more of a conversation specifically about our coverage on SRM, the research we have coming out, and helping you to understand how the technology may benefit you and how to implement it. Happy to talk more. And thank you everyone for attending. You will receive the slides for this, and the recording will be published within a couple of days. So expect to receive a link to that.